Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/howshemoms. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Margene Archibald was newly married, pregnant with her first child, and had just moved to Boise, Idaho. She hadn't seen her family since her wedding 7 months before, and they were all going to meet in Utah that week. She was so excited. Then she got the call. Her family had gotten into an accident on the drive to Utah, and her mother had passed away in the crash. Being new in town, she didn't have many friends, but she had Susan Hansen. Their husbands worked together, and Susan had reached out to Margene right when she moved in to make sure she was settling into her new home.
I was just devastated. I was in shock. And Susan, bless her heart, just came right over. Sometimes you hesitate when something like this happens to a friend and you don't know what to do. Susan always knew what to do. She just came right over. I guess she got babysitters for her kids, and she just spent the day with me. Just kind of holding my hand and just being there and letting me talk about my mom. It's hard to talk about. Not my mom, just what a good friend she was. Just how patient, and she was just the right person. And you don't have to do really anything. You just have to be there. There's nothing I needed her to do. I just needed her to be there.
This is the How She Moms podcast, where we talk about how different moms solve the same problems. I'm Whitney Archibald, a mother of 5 children myself. I collect ideas so you can pick and choose what works for you and your family. This week, we're talking about how moms serve. I didn't have to look very far to find amazing examples of mothers serving one another, their families, their communities, and the world. In fact, most of the stories come just from my own neighborhood. I could do a podcast episode on this topic every week and never run out of amazing stories to share. In fact, I found so many great ideas that I'm going to split it into 2 parts. Today, I'll talk about how moms serve their own families and their friends and neighbors. In part 2, I'll talk about moms who have branched out to serve in their communities and beyond. Throughout both parts, we'll also talk about how we can teach our kids to serve and how to create a culture of service in our homes. But first, I want to continue the story about Margene and Susan. Soon after her mom's death, Margene had her baby, who actually happens to be my husband.
I had a baby and no mom to be there, and my sisters were far away, and they had lots of little kids. And so she decided that she had to throw me a baby shower. And I said, Susan, I don't really know anybody to invite to this baby shower. And she says, oh, don't worry about that. You have lots of friends. And she threw me this fabulous baby shower. It was just wonderful. They were her friends. They became my friends. I didn't know who these women were. It was just a wonderful baby shower, and I didn't feel weird at all that all these people that I didn't know that well, they seemed to really want to be at my baby shower, and I think it was for Susan.
And without a mom to call for help as she tried to navigate life with this new baby, Margene knew she could turn to Susan.
I had a really hard time nursing, and Susan came in, and she taught me how to nurse. And she said, you can do it, just, stick with it. And she was right. About 6 weeks later, it was just easy as can be. And I loved being able to nurse my babies, and she gave me the confidence to be able to do that.
Their friendship continued until one snowy weekend, they were up in the mountains together. Susan had been elected as the Sergeant-at-Arms of the Idaho legislature and had to get back for a major event. But the roads were closed because of a terrible storm. So a friend flew in on a private plane to pick her up, along with one of her daughters. On the way back, the plane got lost in the storm.
They couldn't find the plane because it was so stormy, and it was so much snow, and it went down in wilderness area. And so as soon as we could get back, we went over to her family, and we were just there with her 3 remaining children and her husband. And it was really sweet. I was glad to be there and do whatever I could until, they were on their feet again. And if it was just sitting over there, fixing a meal, doing the dishes, I think her youngest daughter, Katie, just loved me being there because I was her mom's friend.
Eleanor Roosevelt wrote, Most women, I think, though they may complain a little about this, would agree that meeting the needs of others is not a real burden. It is what makes life worth living. It is probably the deepest satisfaction a woman has. Like firefighters, doctors, nurses, and teachers, moms are on the front lines of the service industry. We get on-the-job training from day one to recognize the needs of these little people and to serve those needs. And these little helpless human beings have so many needs. They will literally die if we don't feed them, clean them up, and keep them from falling off high things. We serve almost by default, but serving our families certainly counts as doing service. There are seasons in our lives as mothers, especially the season of young children, when serving in our homes is just about the only service we have time to do. Taking care of our littles takes all of our bandwidth. That's totally fine, and it counts. Sure, you may wish you had time to take a meal over to a neighbor who just had a baby, but if you're barely scraping together some sandwiches for your own dinner, the timing is just not right. Julie Cornwell learned this lesson as a young mother. She had 2 little girls, ages 4 and 2, and she lived in an area with lots of other young moms who needed help. It seemed like there was always someone in her church congregation having a baby, having a miscarriage, or getting sick. There was a lot of needs for meals, babysitting, and other service. She really wanted to help all of these women.
I remember specifically one day, I had been baking like all day. I made lasagna, which took me forever. And I remember my little girls from my kitchen and the dining room and the living room, there was not any space I could walk on without stepping on stuff. They had just thrown things everywhere, just gotten into all their toys. And I remember baking all afternoon, and just the house got crazier and crazier and messier and messier. And I finally made the meal. My kitchen looked like just a disaster area. And I took the meal, and then I came back, and I just remember looking around going, oh my gosh, this is such a nightmare, Now I'm going to be cleaning up for 3 hours. And my husband got home that day, and it was crazy and chaos, And I almost feel like I didn't even make us a dinner because I ran out of ingredients or something. And so it's like, hey, you want a bowl of cereal? And here the house smelled good and all these things. And finally he says, you know what? I think that you need to reassess what your objective is in doing all of this service. He goes, because you are serving everyone else, and I feel like you're almost forgetting about us. And I'm just like, oh no. And so it was a really good wake-up call for me, because I was the person who, if a sign-up sheet went around in my church congregation, I would sign up for everything. And I felt like I had to. I felt like I didn't have a choice. I'm like, this is what I need to do. The people need me. They need my help. And he's like, there are other people who can step up and serve also. And people do. Look, lots of other people sign it too, and you don't need to do it all the time. It was hard for me because I remember almost hyperventilating in the beginning, where I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't let a sign-up sheet go by without me signing up for something or to help someone. But I feel like that really helped me to really have a different perspective and kind of pick and choose. Is this something that I really can do right now in my life? Or do I need to focus on serving my family, or just breathe, or not running myself ragged so that I can't be present and for my own family,
For some moms, the season of high-intensity needs in their own families is longer than for others. My friend Kelly Durant was always praying for service opportunities. Then she had twins who were born very premature. Sadly, her daughter Ressa only lived for a couple of weeks. Her son Cameron survived with cerebral palsy. She told me that she didn't realize that her prayers would be answered in this way, but that she really does believe that her prayers for service opportunities were answered with this sweet boy that requires a lot of care. In some seasons, like when Margene lost her mom or when you have a new baby, you are the service project, and that's okay too. Think of the opportunities you're providing for those friends who really do want to help you. Life is long, and there will be plenty of time for you to be the one doing the serving. And when you get to a time where you can reach out and help others, you'll find that motherhood has trained you to serve. Whether we realize it or not, we're learning a tangible skill set of service that extends to serving friends, our community, and beyond. In other seasons, you have the bandwidth to be helpful, but sometimes it's hard to know how to help. Ultimately, serving other people is about being useful, which is one of Eleanor Roosevelt's 4 requirements for happiness, along with honesty, doing your best, and the ability to love others. We're going to hear from Eleanor a lot in this podcast because I just read her book, You Learn by Living, and it was so amazing. She has a whole chapter on usefulness, which she defines as, quote, a kind of blanket word that covers all the many kinds of service to one's fellow men. It is an expression of human love. I know it's just semantics, but I really like how she interchanges the word usefulness for service. It's just so practical. She goes on to say, usefulness, whatever form it may take, is the price we should pay for the air we breathe and the food we eat and the privilege of being alive. And it is its own reward as well, for it is the beginning of happiness, just as self-pity and withdrawal from the battle are the beginning of misery. I love that last part. Serving others is the beginning of happiness. That was definitely true for Kirsty Clark.
Service really helped pull me out of my depression. Jackson was born on New Year's Eve morning, and so I really struggled that entire year. And a year later on New Year's Eve, I was deciding what I wanted to do for my New Year's resolutions. And I had read a talk that talked about service and how serving others can help us to be happier. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to try this. So my New Year's resolution was to help one person every day. And I was going to do it prayerfully, and I was going to ask the Lord to put me in a situation where I could be in the right place at the right time. And I had some of the most amazing experiences that just testified to me that service is the key, the missing ingredient for us. Because when we are feeling sad and lonely, we want others to help us. Yeah. We're just thinking, you know, how can someone come and aid me today? But if we take that one thing that we need and give that to someone else, what I realized is we receive that same thing as well.
Yeah.
That clip was from the Helping of Happiness podcast, hosted by a good friend, Hillary Hess. Service was one of 4 ways Kirsty overcame depression. If you want to hear the rest of her story, it's episode 14 of the Helping of Happiness podcast. Now it's time for this week's book recommendation. Audible is offering listeners of the How She Moms podcast a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. This week, my recommendation is, no surprise here, a book by Eleanor Roosevelt, You Learn by Living. This was one of those books that just started popping up everywhere for me, even though it was published in 1960. Suddenly, everyone was recommending it, so I ordered it, of course, and now I'm a major Eleanor fan. This book is a collection of 11 things she learned throughout her life, with chapters like Learning to Learn, The Difficult Art of Maturity, and The Right to be an Individual. She's funny and wise and has such a zest for life. I wanted to reread it immediately after reading it. Here are a couple of my favorite quotes. First, never be bored and you will never be boring. Oh, that's so true. And here's one that's particularly relevant to the adventure of motherhood. She says, meeting smaller emergencies and learning to deal with them has given me the confidence to deal with the larger emergency. So little by little, I found out how to do things. After each catastrophe, you don't worry so much the next time, and each time you emerge stronger from your victory. And Eleanor should know. Her life was full of catastrophe, but she accomplished so much. After this book, I'm on a quest to learn as much about Eleanor Roosevelt and her life as I can. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/howshemoms for your free audiobook. Now we're going to spend some time talking about how to be useful. Jana Free teaches her kids to serve through one of their family mottos, perceive the need.
For example, if you're somewhere, let's say you're at an activity that someone else is in charge of, and you look around and you notice that something needs to be taken care of, that maybe this individual could use your help somehow. You don't just sit back. You say, hey, I noticed this. What can I take care of this for you? And so it's, perceive the need. Try to figure out how you can be involved, how you can contribute, as opposed to just, sitting back.
And Jana's kids are definitely good at perceiving the need. I've seen them in action at church activities. They help with other people's kids, set up tables and chairs, clear dishes. They're always actively engaged. So let's talk a little bit more about how to perceive the need, to figure out how we can be helpful. I divided this section into 5 different tips. The first is to lay the foundation of friendship. We can't very well perceive someone's need if we don't reach out and get to know them in the first place. This was key in Susan's relationship with Margene. It would have been weird to offer to spend a day with a total stranger after her mom died.
Had she not established a deep friendship before then, she wouldn't have been able to be there for me. So it's important when you want to be there for those important times and times you're needed to lay the foundation for a friendship before then, because then you can really help.
The second tip is to start with your own strengths and then find a way to serve others with those talents. Juliana Hall loves to cook, so she often just doubles a recipe and then thinks of who might benefit from a ready-made meal that night. She has a friend who doesn't like bringing people dinner, but she's happy to babysit for people. She always seems to have a few extra kids at her house. The two friends could beat themselves up for not doing the service that they don't like to do, or they can embrace the kind of service that comes naturally to them. I asked members of the How She Moms Facebook group how they use their strengths to help others, and I got such a wide variety of responses. It's so cool how different all of our gifts are and how beautifully they come together. Rachel Beckstead's mom is a good seamstress, so she's helped a lot of people fix or sew clothes, especially dresses. Her sister is a great hostess and has hosted a lot of parties and wedding receptions at her house. Kelly Durant has a hidden talent that she discovered only after giving birth. Her milk supply was prolific enough that she was able to donate 100 gallons of breast milk to the Mother's Milk Bank of North Texas. Megan Nelson is a nurse practitioner. She pulls out stitches for people, gives medical advice when she can, attends baby deliveries, or comes to the hospital when asked. Jen Young has helped friends jump cars with dead batteries and change flat tires. One of her friends helps her troubleshoot home and appliance repairs, and they get them done together. When Diana Visser was pregnant, her husband lost his job. Her church congregation rallied around her. A man from church did their taxes, and friends from church organized babysitting once a week while she went to school to get her teaching degree. The third tip is to build service into your routine. At dinner, Angela Halliday asks her kids one good thing that happened, one bad thing, and how they served someone. Shanae Briggs adds to that, asking her kids what they did for someone else and what someone else did for them. She also asks her kids to compliment each other every day, which definitely qualifies as an act of service. She tries to compliment other people in front of her kids, like the checker at the grocery store. Megan Gutensberger keeps a gratitude journal and writes 2 things she's thankful for and 1 act of service she did each day. Julie prays daily to find people she can serve. Kelly Archibald likes to ask people who are having a tough time or who just have a lot of young kids at home to send her their grocery list when she's about to go shopping. It's easy for her to just add their shopping to her own, but it makes a big difference for them. Katie Toops is good at making meals ahead or making more than she needs and freezing the rest. Then her freezer's always stocked with homemade meals. When someone needs a meal, she can just pull one out and deliver it. Number 4 is to just show up. Cheryl was on bed rest the month before her last son was born, then in the hospital for 2 weeks. The baby was in the hospital for 6 weeks. This was her 5th child, so she had 4 other kids at home, but her friends showed up.
My friends were just incredible. I mean, they wouldn't say, "Oh, let me know what I can do." They'd call me and say, "I have extra dinner, I'm bringing it over." Or I had a friend who showed up every week with her cleaning supplies to clean my bathrooms. She brought her teenage daughters. And, at first I was like, no, because, really, honestly, my bathrooms had not been cleaned that well for a while because I had not been feeling well. My husband and kids had been doing it, but, at first she just showed up, knocked on my door with her bucket of cleaning supplies. She's like, "I'm here to clean your bathrooms." And I'm like, But she was a good enough friend that I was like, okay, but I was so nervous that she would judge me or whatever. She didn't. She just was like, "Here we go, let's go clean the bathrooms." And then she showed up every week for probably 3 months. And my ward came in and cleaned my house literally from top to bottom while I was in the hospital after I'd had him. And one of my friends just would come visit, because I was on bed rest. I was lonely. I couldn't go out and do things. Another friend just picked up my kids from school every day. It was just all these little things that probably to them was not that big of a deal, but for me it was huge.
You can find Cheryl on Instagram. Her account is Supermamas4Real with the number 4. She's also starting her own podcast soon about parenting teens. Some types of service fit almost any occasion. Offering to babysit, running errands, just sitting and listening, or offering encouragement. These are things you can usually just show up and do. Sometimes when you need help and have many willing friends, coordinating the helpers becomes a job in itself. Taking this off someone's plate can be a huge favor. When Danielle Banner was moving, her friend Kelsey, who lives 300 miles away, wanted to help. So she organized some mutual friends to help watch Danielle's kids and help her clean and pack for the whole week of the move. And then, of course, there's food, that relentless chore of feeding the family. After Cassie had a miscarriage, one friend showed up at her house with a rotisserie chicken, others brought entire meals, and one friend who lived across the country had a meal delivered to her house. Gift cards to restaurants are another great way to provide a meal for someone in need. When Amber had a miscarriage, a friend packed her kids' school lunches for 3 weeks. That is amazing. But when you're providing food, it's often good to find out what is already being provided and what would be most useful. One mom had surgery and had trouble getting around. Many of her well-meaning friends brought plates of treats and cookies. But eventually she was just throwing some of them right in the trash because her kids were just eating junk non-stop. She appreciated the gesture, but they just couldn't eat any more cookies. Brittany, who blogs at homegrowntraditions.com, likes to provide healthy snacks, such as veggies and dip and protein balls, for friends who've just had a baby or are going through any other hardship, instead of full meals. She says, having things to grab and go when you're hungry but don't have the energy to be in the kitchen is hugely helpful. When Kelly Durant was spending so much time in the NICU with her premature babies, many friends brought dinners, but after a while, what she really wanted was for some good breakfast food. So she just asked a good friend who was bringing a meal to bring breakfast instead. She was happy to provide the precise thing that Kelly was craving. Number 5 is to draw from our own experiences, thinking about what we needed most in certain situations and offering to help meet those needs for others. Most of us have been sick and or pregnant, moved, and cared for new babies. I asked moms to send me examples of service that really helped them during these common situations to start you thinking about things you can do. For example, during the first trimester of pregnancy, you can offer to do chores that involve strong, nausea-inducing smells. You can also offer to watch other kids during all those doctor appointments. Jen had a lovely friend who did this for her throughout her whole pregnancy. When she picked them up after an appointment, her friend would ask when her next appointment was and put it right in her calendar. Each of the 4 times Haley Kirkland has been pregnant, her friend Jackie Richardson has sent her a package with Gatorade, ginger ale, Preggy Pops, and crackers. In the last trimester, you can volunteer to watch kids and bring meals before the baby is born. Often we do these things after, but forget how hard these last few weeks of pregnancy are and how much you have on your to-do list at that time. You can also help with household tasks that require bending. Allie's mom gave her 1-year-old a bath every other night for the last 2 months of her pregnancy when it was so hard to bend over and crouch down. You can also keep a pregnant friend company and pamper her. When Heather Kellersberger went over her due date, her friends set up lunch dates with her to distract her while she waited. Mari Winder's friends took her to get a prenatal massage and out to lunch 2 weeks before she had her baby, and it was heavenly. Once the baby comes, there are a whole new set of needs. That tiny being takes so much care and attention that helping a friend take care of their other responsibilities is often the most useful thing you can do. Here are some ideas. Sarah Engebretson likes to give her friends nursing care packages with snacks, magazines, or books, a water bottle, and lanolin. After I had my last baby, my friend Lori Brescia drove my kindergartner to school every day for a whole year, no strings attached. Candy's mom hired a teenage girl to come weekly to play with her older kids so she could sit and hold the baby in peace. My friends pooled their money and gave me 4 hours of house cleaning as a baby shower gift. Amazing. And perhaps the most fun way to serve a new mom is to offer to hold the baby. Cassie Gadd had a colicky baby who wanted to be held all the time, so she couldn't get anything done. A friend came over one day and just held her baby for 3 hours while Cassie cleaned the house. Another common experience we can all usually relate to is when someone moves in or out of your neighborhood. When Kara Farnsworth moved, friends watched her kids, picked them up from preschool, brought dinner, or better yet, invited her family to dinner at their house so there wouldn't be any mess. They gave rides to and from school, offered a place to stay during showings, brought road trip gifts and treats, and sent cards, letters, and texts. Her son's teacher and his whole class even FaceTimed with her son to see how his move went and tell him how they missed him. People need help on the other end of the move as well. Here are some ideas. When Kelly Archibald sees a moving truck, she orders pizza for the neighbors. It's a great way to break the ice and doesn't require that they find their dishes. In the same vein, Sarah Engebretson likes to bring muffins for an easy handheld breakfast. You can also provide basic supplies. Kara Waddleworth brings new neighbors a welcome gift of toilet paper, paper towels, and other supplies. Liz brings paper plates, napkins, utensils, and cups so they don't have to figure out dishes. You can also introduce them to other neighbors. My own neighbor, Van Oberly, made our new neighbors a chart of the cul-de-sac with everyone's first and last names and which house they lived in, pets included. No awkward moments where you forget everybody's names. Finally, the last thing I want to talk about this week is how to teach our kids to serve and to create a service culture in our home. Probably the best way to teach our kids to serve is to make sure they see us serving. It's not bragging to talk to our kids about what we do for other people. It helps them see service as a way of life. And of course, we can involve our kids in the service too. When Julie makes a meal or treat for someone, she recruits her kids to help.
I have them help me deliver them. They'll help me come up with, who do we want to take things to? And I'll have them run things around, like for neighbors and different things. Every Christmas, we get a gift card, and I'll have them think of somebody that they think could use it. And then we'll just deliver it anonymously, deliver it with a treat. And they like that a lot.
You can also teach kids to serve each other. Lisa Holzer tries to make service fun for her kids by having them do secret service for each other. If one kid hasn't done one of their chores, she asks another child if they want to do secret service and do that chore for them. They make it fun by being sneaky about it. Danielle Banner made a star for secret service. She gives one kid the star and then asks them to do something for another kid and leave the star. Then that kid is supposed to do secret service and leave the star. When we make service a visible part of our lives, the big payoff is when our kids initiate their own service. Juliana's daughter asked if she could bake cookies for a friend who was having a bad day. It wasn't convenient that day, but Juliana let her because she was so proud that she had noticed and was taking action. Angela Halliday's son Ben was repeatedly in the hole with his lunch account at school. When Angela approached him about it, she found out that he had been buying lunch for a friend who came to school without a lunch every day. Instead of being annoyed like she had been, she ended up so proud of him. Let's end with this sweet story from my friend Donna Koto about an experience she had with her son. Donna is one of those people who lives and breathes service every day of her life. I'm always finding out new ways she's helping other people.
He was little, he was 3, and we were in Target. And there was a little boy, a special needs little boy, who was just sitting on the floor and reading books. And my son just walked over to him and sat down next to him, and they started reading together. And the mom and I, we walked closer together, and she just looked at me and said, "Thank you for teaching your son to not judge." And it wasn't just the little boy who wanted a friend, but it was the mom who wanted to see her little boy having fun and having a friend.
Thank you for listening to the How She Moms podcast. If you like it, tell a friend. The bigger the community, the more ideas. There are lots of ways you can add your ideas to the How She Moms community. We have a new Facebook group where we share ideas about upcoming topics and help each other solve problems we're facing in motherhood. You can also follow How She Moms on Instagram for quick tips and ideas. And you can go to howshemoms.com where you'll find transcripts of episodes and lots of other great resources. Special thanks to my mom, Susan Singley, for recording my theme music. She played this song all the time when I was growing up, and to me, it's the soundtrack of motherhood.